Hey guys, it's Dan. This is going to be a quick video that I'm doing. I'm going to put unboxing in the title, I think in quotation marks, because while I have the set untouched, all the sprues are still intact, I don't have the physical box, which is something I've been kind of upset with myself about, really for all the kits that I've got over the last decade or so, that I've kind of now made a side hobby of collecting boxes for their box art. And so there's a lot of kits that actually, especially for Perry miniatures in particular, some of the Warlord game stuff's a little bit hit and miss for me, but I really like the illustrated cover art. And so I've been keeping boxes for the last 12 months, but I'm wishing that I'd been doing that for much longer than that. So this is one example where I got the box, opened it up, didn't build anything, but threw the box away. So what I have instead is kind of a sprue review for you. There's a couple of interesting things about this kit that I wanted to point out. I think I have the editing skill to drop in a picture of the box to talk about very briefly. I won't go into detail like I did with the War Games Atlantic stuff. But the Warlord games, their cover art's a little bit hit and miss for me sometimes, as I mentioned, a little bit cartoony, I guess, maybe. I don't know if it's something to do with the the colors they use or what, but it's all very effective. It conveys what's inside the box. And as I've been mentioning, I always prefer illustrated cover art to pictures of models in the front. So that's always a plus for me. Otherwise, their boxes are very consistently in that style where it's a black box. It's got kind of the cool design that is cordoning off the information on the left from the picture on the right-hand side. So I think it's good. It's good enough box art. It's fine. The back of it, I can't find a picture of, but it's similar to what you would expect, where you've got photos of the models and about Macedonians and their fighting styles. So back to the sprues here for a second. So in terms of value, Warlord Games is pretty hard to beat. And this box is a good example of that, where you've got 40 models for $40 US that you can find even cheaper online from, discounters, what have you. So yeah, $1 a model is pretty damn good. But one caveat for Warlord in particular, for me anyway, is that their quality is sometimes fairly hit and miss. And a part of that is due to the fact that over time, they've gotten better. The scales have changed. That's another huge problem, especially with their earlier Imperial Roman kits. So yeah, scales sometimes are a problem with Warlord. They also went through a period where they did a lot of acquisitions. Some people might not know this, but like their Samurai range is actually one that they purchased from a company called War Games Atlantic. They bought out everything that they had produced up to that point. Their Vikings, their Saxons, their Samurai, and there's something else. Anyway, it was a smaller company, but Warlord bought out their range. Also, their Landsknechts was purchased from a company called Pro Gloria that had done a Kickstarter to make multi-part plastic Landsknechts. So as a result, their range, Warlords, is kind of a hodgepodge. You've got different sculptors over a long period of time that have designed things with different styles at different scales. So all of that is to say that, for me anyway, like I do my research on Warlord kits before I buy them, precisely because I don't want to be disappointed when I get the box. So let's talk about this box then. So what this is, so 40 models, again, $40, can't beat that value. The way that they arrived, again, no bases, which actually is not always a thing with Warlord like it is with War Games Atlantic, but it did come with slide transfers. So again, those Renadra bases are very easy to pick up, the green ones. There's all kinds of basing options online, and it makes sense for this in particular because different people are going to base differently. I base on 20mm squares. A lot of people are basing, especially for historicals, on much larger bases than that. But the way that they arrived there, it's 10 sprues of 4 models, which is maybe not what I would have done kind of logistically, but it works all the same. There's no command sprue or anything like that, so you can get all this out of the way because they're all exactly the same. But there's some things about the sprue I wanted to point out, and there's some scale things I wanted to talk about, especially with regard to Victrix, because Victrix recently or semi-recently, but in the last couple of years, has put out their own box of Macedonian Phalangites, which I think are directly comparable to this kit, and so worth taking a look maybe at some Victrix models compared to these to see if, this kit or that kit, or a combination of both, as might be the case, is what you might like. So sprue layout is pretty simplistic because there's not a lot to these models. You can imagine it's just going to be the big old Sarisa, these pikes, some shields, heads, and then the bodies. Warlord also does this a lot where they have kind of everything molded onto the body, or as much as they can. You can even see the left arms here in all cases are on the body. Sword scabbards are on the body. The torso and the legs are sculpted together. This is really good for when you're putting together tons and tons of models. Like, I know that's something in the Napoleonic community that people, at least my understanding, I don't play Napoleonics, but seem to like a lot, where you don't make it fiddly, like you just cut stuff off the sprue and then start painting, which leads to some like kind of monopose looks, but it works here again with a pike block. Everybody's going to be in somewhat the same pose anyway. So let me give you some shots here. So a couple other things of note. So you can see there are actually 6 Sarisa arms, 6 pike arms to 4 bodies. So what that means is that you have within this kit 60 pike arms and 40 models. So if you have or can source bodies otherwise, then you have 20 extra pike arms that you could potentially use with some minor kit bashing. The arms themselves, some of them are in a kind of shoulder arms position where the pike's going to be straight up and down, and some of them are at a what I would call at port position where they're 2 hands on the pike and they're going to be leaning forward. So half of the pikes can be done in a at port position, half of them are in a kind of shoulder arms position. So you can mix and match how you choose. Again, there are more pikes than bodies in the kit, so it doesn't have to be a 50-50 split. You could have just the front couple of ranks being kind of leaning forward, or you could have more guys leaning forward than in a up and down position. Head options, there's 6 of them for 4 bodies, which is again a nice thing to see. Scale I'll talk about in just a second, because if you can source heads from different kits, again, different Warlord kits or Victrix kits, it'll give you a ton of variety. And you can see in terms of design here, this is, for those who have dealt with the Victrix Carthaginian box, or bag, as they currently ship their stuff out, there's a lot of design crossover here, where these are like kind of Mediterranean, North African, Greek, and then of course Macedonian heads that are all kind of mixed in here. So I like this one here. This one's got the face mask on it. So the design, actually, the detail, I should say, is very good for Warlord. Again, they're hit and miss for me, but you can see these details are quite crisp, especially when we're talking about some fiddly bits like straps for scabbards and stuff. It all turned out really good. Same thing in terms of flash. Again, we would normally see mold lines here, and I really don't see much of any with this kit in particular. So you truly could just kind of pop these off the sprue, put them together quite easily, and be on your way. So yeah, I think this is successful. I also like, from a detail standpoint, how much armor there are on these guys. I just think that's pretty cool. So a couple things I wanted to point out to you just very briefly. One is pike length, for those that care about that kind of thing. So historically, Sarisas would have been like 20 to 23 feet long. Like, they're huge compared to, call them European pikes that would have been like 15 to 18 feet long. So the Sarisas would have been a bit longer, and that is, well, it depends. So it depends on the manufacturer. What I've got here, this is a painted Perry Miniatures pikeman from their Mercenaries kit. And you can see, in terms of pike length, it's fairly comparable. It's almost the exact same size. Speaking of Warlord games, same thing here, where I've got a Warlord. This is actually a kit bash with a Perry torso, Perry Foot Knight torso. But these are Warlord games Landsknecht's arms. And this one's a little bit shorter. You can see it doesn't go quite as far up. For those that care about pike length, that's what we're talking about. I think it's mostly correct as far as I'm concerned. Now, in terms of scale, the more direct comparison, I think, is with their Victrix counterparts. So what I've got here in my left hand is two Victrix sculpts from different eras. So Victrix, in my opinion, there's like a pre-Viking and post-Viking era for Victrix. A lot of the Napoleonic stuff falls into the pre-Viking. The pre-Viking era is fine. Like, everything looks decent enough. Again, value for money is excellent. However, the sculpting is a little bit on the small side, and some of the details are not quite right, in my opinion, a little flatter. So that's what you can maybe even see. Looking at this here, I've got two similarly posed models, both from Victrix. So on the left-hand side, this is their Greeks. They have 4 Greek sets. They're all essentially the same. They just have some different head options. So on the left is one of the older Greek models, and on the right is one of the newer Greek models. And they were very clever the way that they put this out, because this linen cuirass model body has now, I think, done some heavy lifting on like 5 different kits that they've put out. It was the Carthaginian box, like the Libyan Phoenician infantry used this torso. They're coming out with a new box of Greeks, I think, to replace the older one, because you can see that the older one looks kind of weenie in comparison to the new one on the right. But they also use this on their Macedonian box. So the Victrix one, the Macedonian box, this is again $40 for $40 from Warlord Games. Victrix is $30 for 27 models, which is a weird number. And I think the way that breaks up is 4 sprues of 6 models and then 1 3-model command sprue. That's how you end up with this weird 27 number. But in terms of how these scale up, you can see the Victrix one is a little bit bigger, where the Warlord guys maybe are more comparable to the older style Greeks. The newer ones are just a little bit thicker, I would say. And so here, if I put this one next to this one, you can see that's a better comparison, whereas the new ones are a little bit bigger. So I actually don't have a problem with this, because humans are that way. You'll have some that are larger than others, and it's not like crazy off, but it is, in my opinion, it's noticeable, especially if you had, instead of mixing them like within units, if you had them split up maybe as 2 different units on the battlefield. Ignore this pikearm. This is just a conversion I did. This is not actually from the Victrix Macedonian box, but the body is. So I just wanted to bring that in by way of comparison. But yeah, again, I'll keep this video short. I think this is a really good kit from them. Again, smaller scale for fantasy wargaming, but it's fairly on par with other manufacturers and kits in terms of historical models. This is one of their better kits, I think. Value is really incredible as far as I'm concerned. And this is one that is worth picking up if you're into that kind of thing. Appreciate you guys hanging out with me. And until the next video, happy gaming.